Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a really granular look at, well, the true foundation of the Walt Disney Company.
Hmm.
We're not just talking about the animation or the movies, but the financial structure, the organizational stability, and the quiet, almost uncompromising leadership of the man responsible for building the walls around the magic.
Roy Disney.
Exactly, Roy Disney.
And it's arguably the most essential and, most frequently overlooked part of that corporate history. I mean, everybody knows the name Walt
Of
Disney,
course, the visionary.
the visionary, the innovator. But our mission today is really to distill the core knowledge about his older brother, Roy Oliver Disney. We want to frame him not just as, a relative or some secondary figure.
Right, not just Walt's brother.
No, he was the indispensable co-founder, born in 1893, and the true financial architect. His disciplined structure is what ensured the entire entertainment empire could actually survive all those high-risk creative ventures and ultimately thrive for the next century.
That's the key distinction, isn't it? We aren't just telling a biography. We're sort of analyzing the DNA of a corporation. Roy O. Disney co-founded the company in October of 1923. And from that very first moment, he's the one establishing the rules of engagement. He served as the first chief executive officer, guiding every single business move, every contract, every financing decision.
And in doing so, he gave Walt the freedom he needed.
The absolute freedom to focus purely on the creative product.
And the sources really reveal this profound reliance on that parallel structure. If Walt's genius was in dreaming the impossible.
Then Roy's genius was in making the impossible fiscally solvent.
That's it, exactly. His legacy is defined by this meticulous financial planning and especially later a fierce dedication to preserving his brother's vision after Walt's passing.
Okay, so here's the truly compelling hook that I think anchors his whole life story in pure commitment. You might imagine a startup involves a formal business plan and, I don't know, seed funding.
Right, the modern Silicon Valley way.
But the Disney Brothers studio began in a much more emotionally critical place. We learned that a serious illness, tuberculosis, contracted during his military service, was the direct catalyst that brought Roy and Walt together to start the company.
And that physical vulnerability is directly linked to his professional strength. It's fascinating. But the most staggering evidence, I think, of Roy's business skill involves his final monumental act.
Walt Disney World.
Overseeing the construction and opening of Walt Disney World. It was a project that cost $400 million.
In 1971.
A staggering sum. And he managed to launch it without the burden of additional external debt. Understanding the how of that achievement is, it's central to understanding his entire career philosophy.
So let's unpack that. Let's unpack the origins of that intense, almost conservative financial discipline. Roy Oliver Disney was born in Chicago, Illinois on June 24th, 1893.
His parents were Elias Charles Disney, who was Irish-Canadian, and Flora Cole Disney, of English-German-American heritage. So very much a product of that Midwestern melting pot.
And those roots in the Midwest, they really seem to provide the framework for that exceptional work ethic that became synonymous with the Disney name.
It really did. The family moved first to Marceline, Missouri, which everyone knows from, the Main Street inspiration.
Right.
And then, critically, to Kansas City in 1911. And Kansas City isn't just a geographical location in this story. It's where Roy learned the practical mechanics of running a demanding, cash-intensive business operation.
And the sources give us amazing detail about this. This isn't just a vague, they worked hard. We have a specific date.
You do, July 1st in 1911.
Their father, Elias, purchases a major newspaper delivery route for the Kansas City Star. And we have to emphasize, this wasn't for pocket money. This was a high-volume, logistically complex enterprise.
It was essentially their first distribution and logistics company. Think about the numbers that are cited in the sources. Roy and Walt delivered the morning paper, the Kansas City Times, to approximately 700 customers.
700? That alone is a huge job.
And that's before dawn. Then they deliver the Kansas City Star to more than 600 customers in the evening.
So they were managing over 1,300 daily transactions and delivery points. And these numbers only grew as teenagers.
It's unbelievable. And that level of operation required more than just stamina. It required, exceptional administrative skill.
We always focus on the physical grind, the early mornings, but what about the financial lessons they were learning?
Exactly. They were responsible for collecting payments, for tracking subscription lapses, handling cash flow variances, ensuring accountability for inventory. the papers themselves.
All before turning 18, it taught them, I have to imagine, immediate and unforgiving lessons in profitability.
And risk assessment.
Hmm.
I mean, if a customer paid late or just canceled, that wasn't the newspaper's problem.
It was their problem.
It was Roy and Walt's problem. This, I would argue, is the genesis of his lifelong aversion to unnecessary debt. He learned, right there on the streets of Kansas City, that self-sufficiency guarantees survival.
Despite this just overwhelming schedule, Roy still manages to graduate from the Manual Training High School of Kansas City in 1912. That drive just underscores his commitment.
Absolutely. After leaving the paper route, he worked on a farm for a bit, but the career path that really forged the financial architect we're talking about began shortly after.
The pivot point.
The pivot point was his employment as a bank clerk, specifically at the First National Bank of Kansas City. He wasn't just, filing papers. He was getting a formal, practical education in the mechanics of lending, capital formation, institutional finance.
And he wasn't alone there, which is a wonderful historical detail. He was working there with his older brother, Raymond Arnold Disney.
That's right. So this hands-on experience in banking, it gave him the necessary skepticism and prudence about credit that would later define his entire management style at the studio.
He didn't just manage cash flow, he understood the cost of capital.
Precisely. For a business that requires enormous capital outlay long before you see any returns like feature animation.
Oh.
And that banking background is priceless. It gave him a systematic, cautious, and analytical perspective on money. The perfect ballast, really, against the sometimes chaotic, expansive, and free spending nature of pure creative enterprise.
But then history intervenes. Roy serves in the United States Navy from 1917 to 1919 during World War I.
And this service, while honorable, brought about a health crisis that, ironically, provided the exact window needed to launch the company.
His time in the Navy was cut short.
Cut short by tuberculosis, which he contracted during service. It led to an honorable discharge, and this illness, which was initially just debilitating, it set the stage for that crucial moment in 1923.
Okay, so you have to picture the scene. It's October 1923. Roy is convalescing from a recurrence of tuberculosis. He's at the Sawtelle Veterans Home in Los Angeles.
He's sidelined. He's focused purely on recovery.
And it's into this quiet, medically managed environment that Walt just bursts in late at night.
Yeah, full of energy, full of ideas. He'd secured a distribution deal with New York's Margaret Winkler for the Alice comedies.
So he had the product.
He had the product, but he needed immediate help and not withdrawing. He needed someone to structure the business, handle the contract, find the initial capital. He needed an executive partner, not another animator.
It speaks volumes about Roy's sense of duty. I mean, here he is grappling with this chronic, serious illness, and Walt presents him with a high-stakes, entrepreneurial gamble that required 100% commitment.
And the commitment was immediate.
Yeah.
And it was total. The sources all emphasize that after hearing the proposal, after realizing the magnitude of the opportunity and the instability it needed to overcome, Roy agreed. And he left the hospital the very next morning.
The very next morning. The sheer will involved in that is just remarkable.
And that detail about his health, that he famously never again suffered a relapse of tuberculosis, it almost lends this mythological quality to his dedication.
Right. It suggests the mission, the profound responsibility of building the studio provided a purpose so vital that it superseded the physical ailment.
He chose work and commitment over rest, and in doing so, he found his cure. And that level of unwavering focus is the narrative thread we have to follow through the next 5 decades of his life.
So that moment, October 1923, spurred by necessity, it immediately establishes the Disney Brothers studio.
And more importantly, it solidifies that defining partnership dynamic, the separation of power between creation and finance.
What's so fascinating is how clearly those roles were defined from day one. It really helped them avoid the kind of internal power struggles that, well, doomed a lot of rival studios.
Absolutely. The sources draw a direct comparison to other contemporary animation houses, like Fleischer Studios. There you had brothers Max and Dave often sharing creative and managerial roles.
Which got complicated.
It got messy. Roy was different. He was not a co-producer in the creative sense. He was an equal partner in all facets of the production company, but his specialty was entirely on the business architecture.
So while Walt is providing the vision, the narratives, the direction for characters like Mickey Mouse,
Roy is controlling the structure, the cash flow, the vendor contracts, the banking relationships, everything that makes the company run.
This perfect division of labor meant two things. One, Walt was free to fail creatively without fear of, immediate financial reprisal.
And two, Roy was free to manage finances conservatively without creative interference. It's the foundational stability you need for a high-risk creative enterprise.
So how did that division manifest in his corporate leadership titles over the years?
Well, the leadership evolved with the business's complexity. Roy immediately took on the functions of the company's chief executive. He was recognized as the first CEO starting in 1929.
And that's a key time, right as they're steering the company through the transition from silent films to sound.
An enormously expensive transition. The capital demands of that shift were huge.
It's an interesting historical note that while he was performing the duties of CEO from 29 onward, the official title wasn't formally granted until 1966.
It is, yeah. That gap shows how much his authority was simply recognized operationally, regardless of the formal title.
Results, not titles.
Exactly. But as the company grew, particularly after the massive success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs,
Which was a production that required a huge capital investment and absolutely terrified the bankers.
terrified them. After that, Roy's authority had to become more formalized. So he shared the chairman of the board role with Walt starting around 1945, and he also succeeded Walt as president around that same time.
That transition around 45 is significant. That's the era when they're moving into post-war diversification, live-action films, television, and starting the very early planning stages for theme parks.
The scale of the organization just demanded clear, centralized financial management.
And then we see this critical reorganization in 1960 that I think speaks volumes about their relationship and where the company was.
Yes, Walt specifically dropped the chairman title. You have to ask why.
He wanted to dedicate all his focus to Imagineering, to the conceptualization of Disneyland's expansion, and, of course, the Florida project.
And that move centralized all business and financial authority completely with Roy.
It wasn't a demotion for Walt. It was a proactive decision to protect the company. Walt implicitly recognized that Roy needed this consolidated, powerful position to handle the financial complexities of building parks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about real estate acquisition, infrastructure financing, securing government agreements, tasks far, far removed from animating a cartoon.
It was an organizational necessity.
Roy needed that centralized control to structure the financing for these massive projects and to make sure they didn't compromise the financial health of the existing studio business. He held the presidency until 1968, but even after that, he maintained integral control over strategic financial direction until his death.
So to really understand his role, we need to focus on what he prevented. Are there documented examples where his conservative financial hand steered the company away from potential disaster?
Well, a classic example is the production financing for Snow White in the late 1930s.
Right, Disney's Fly.
Disney's folly. The banks were extremely wary of investing millions into a feature-length cartoon. It was an untested, massive gamble. And Roy's reputation, which he built on years of conservative, meticulous management, was the only reason they secured the necessary bridge loans.
So it was his personal credibility with the banks?
It was his credibility. His ability to project returns accurately and to manage capital reserves throughout that volatile production cycle proved essential. I mean, if anyone else had been the financial guide, that project might have collapsed under its own debt burden before it even premiered. He always prioritized cash reserves over quick leveraging.
So it's clear, Roy was the stabilizing force that allowed Walt the creative elasticity to innovate freely. That partnership. It was tested, I'm sure, but never broken.
And it provided the necessary ingredients for transformation.
The next chapter of Roy's life is where the financial architect truly becomes the ultimate executor of a legacy. Walt Disney dies on December 15th, 1966. Roy was already 73 years old.
73. And he had fully intended to retire.
I mean, who wouldn't?
After more than 4 decades building the company, most people would transition to a purely advisory role. But following Walt's death, Roy postponed his retirement plans indefinitely. It was an act of profound loyalty, but also a necessary corporate intervention.
The company had lost its creative heart and the biggest financial commitment in its history. The massive Florida project, then known just as Disney World, was in its most crucial phase.
Development and construction. They needed a steady hand at the very top. There was no one else who could do it.
So his goal became singular. It was non-negotiable.
To oversee the completion and the successful launch of that resort. And the complexity of this period it just cannot be overstated. He had to reassure stockholders, manage this enormous construction pipeline, secure the financing, all while grieving the loss of his brother and business partner of over 40 years.
And he dedicated 5 grueling years to this one mission, to ensure the project would open not just successfully, but as a fitting tribute.
Absolutely. The resort opened on October 1st, 1971, and Roy ensured the tribute was undeniable. He personally insisted, in the face of internal suggestions to name it something more corporate,
Oh, I'm sure.
that the entire complex be named Walt Disney World. It was his final public dedication, ensuring that his brother's name would forever be associated with the physical manifestation of his final dream.
Okay, now we need to spend some serious time dissecting the financial miracle he pulled off here. This is, I think, the core thesis of Roy O. Disney as a financial genius.
It really is.
The scale was massive. The Walt Disney World Resort opened at a cost of $400 million in 1971 dollars. That is a massive amount of capital for any single development at that time.
And here is the profound insight that you really have to grasp. Roy opened that massive resort without having incurred additional external debt specific to the project's launch.
That is it's astounding. It speaks to a multi-decade strategy of conservative retention and capital planning.
It does.
So help us understand the how. In modern large-scale development, leverage taking on debt is almost always assumed. It's just part of the model. How did Roy achieve this?
It goes right back to his foundation as a banking clerk. He focused on cash retention and managing internally generated capital with extreme efficiency.
Huh.
From the 1950s onward, when Disneyland became a cash-generating engine,
A huge one.
Roy established policies that limited unnecessary dividend payouts and instead focused on reinvesting profits aggressively back into the business, particularly in strategic land banking.
So rather than borrowing against future returns, he was using decades of profits from the existing studio and from Disneyland to fund the construction in Florida.
Precisely. And what's more, the sources point to his mastery of organizational finance and legal structure. The development of Walt Disney World wasn't just a land purchase. It was the complex creation of a massive, self-governing entity.
The Reedy Creek Improvement District.
Exactly. This strategy, centered on infrastructure planning and minimizing municipal dependence, saved the company hundreds of millions over time in taxes and bonds and financing costs. By handling all the infrastructure internally, the roads, the power, the water, they had total control and cost efficiency.
Which limited the need for external high-interest financing.
That's it. This isn't just good accounting. This is strategic, high-level financial engineering. He created an environment where the company controlled its own destiny and its own costs, allowing them to fund the construction largely through internal mechanisms.
The stability that must have provided, even if the park was slow to ramp up attendance after 1971, the company wasn't immediately facing these crushing interest payments.
That stability was the entire point. Roy's priority was not maximizing quarterly returns or leveraging growth. It was ensuring the project's long-term survival, independent of market volatility. Launching debt-free ensured that Walt Disney World had the fiscal breathing room to grow and define itself over the subsequent decades.
It's the ultimate testament to his skill and his dedication, to leaving a solid, protected legacy for his brother.
It really is.
He completed the mission, he secured the project, and he ensured the tribute was paid. With the park open and stable, Roy finally allowed himself to retire, immediately after the opening in October 1971.
And his tenure as an executive, which began with that dramatic departure from a hospital bed, ended 5 years after his brother's death with the delivery of the grandest corporate achievement yet. And his retirement was profoundly brief.
He passed away from a stroke soon after, on December 20, 1971. He was 78.
Precisely 5 years and 5 days after Walt. It's almost as if he truly stayed on just long enough to see his brother's name immortalized and financially secured for good.
Roy's personal life, I think, provides some essential context for his reliability. He built a stable home life that really mirrored the corporate stability he engineered.
He was married to Edna Francis from April 1925 until his death, and their story has that delightful Kansas City connection. They met when she worked at the Kansas City Times.
So right within the sphere of his early commercial life.
Exactly. And the family connections just deepened those bonds. Edna was a close friend of a woman named Meredith A. Boynton, and she introduced Meredith to Roy's older brother, Raymond.
The one who worked with him at the bank.
The very same. Raymond and Meredith married, which established this lifelong, close connection between the two couples. This family unit acted as a fundamental support structure for the growing and often chaotic world of the studio.
And Roy and Edna had one son, Roy Edward Disney, born in 1930. He, of course, carried that family commitment forward, later becoming vice chairman of the Walt Disney Company.
Ensuring that the financial stewardship continued into the next generation.
It's a testament to the family's dedication that Roy's nephew, Charles Elias Disney, honored him by naming his own son Charles Roy Disney. It's a recognition of the quiet but essential contribution Roy made to the entire family name and fortune.
And despite achieving this global success and holding arguably the most powerful executive position in the company, the sources are consistent on one thing about his personality.
He was private.
Incredibly so.
Hmm.
He deliberately rejected the publicity and the fame that came with being Walt's brother. He preferred to remain quietly behind the scenes, focused on the numbers, not the spotlight.
That discretion, it just highlights the nature of his contribution. He sought organizational survival and stability, not personal glory.
But the company has ensured his memory is honored through these physical tributes that, well, they perfectly connect his business reality to the magic he helped sustain.
Let's talk about those infrastructural honors because they're often missed by casual park visitors. These tributes are fittingly woven into the operational fabric of the company.
They are. I mean, he has a deserved star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but the real nods are found in the infrastructure itself.
The locomotives are a fantastic example.
Oh, they're perfect. The Walt Disney World Railroad has 4 working engines, and locomotive number 4 is proudly named the Roy O. Disney.
And his son, Roy E. Disney, formally rededicated that engine in 2002.
That naming convention is just symbolic genius. The locomotive is the engine that pulls the entire visitor experience forward. Roy was the executive engine that powered the entire creative vision.
And that tradition is now global. One of the 3 Hong Kong Disneyland Railroad locomotives is also named after Roy.
Right, reflecting the company tradition of naming these foundational pieces of park infrastructure after past presidents and architects. It's a beautiful touch.
And beyond the parks, his legacy as a cultural benefactor is celebrated through education. The Roy O. Disney Concert Hall, the primary performance space at the California Institute of the Arts, or CalArts.
That's a critical connection to make. CalArts was a passion project of Walt's, designed to funnel creative talent directly into the studio. Roy ensured that the institution was financially sound and had the resources to develop the next generation of animators and storytellers.
So even though his focus was on finance, he deeply understood that the ultimate value of the company lay in nurturing its creative source.
He got it. He knew where the magic actually came from.
And finally, there's the ultimate physical symbol of his essential partnership, the statue titled Sharing the Magic.
It's the perfect companion piece to the instantly recognizable partner statue of Walt and Mickey Mouse.
The contrast and the complementary nature of the statues it beautifully illustrates their roles. Partner shows Walt standing tall, pointing toward the future. He's an active visionary, alongside Mickey, his creation.
But Sharing the Magic, which was dedicated in 1999, shows Roy seated comfortably on a park bench beside Minnie Mouse.
And that composition is so deeply intentional. Roy is portrayed as resting, reflecting, calm. He's finished the heavy lifting. He's sharing a quiet moment with Minnie, who you could argue also represents the business side, often supporting Mickey through all of his schemes.
And the placement is just as important. The statue is located right in the town square of Main Street, USA at the Magic Kingdom, the park he financed debt-free. It stands near the entrance, symbolizing that the business foundation is the first and most essential element of the experience.
And the company's commitment to this tribute is shown by the fact that they've duplicated the statue. There's a copy outside the corporate headquarters in Burbank.
Outside the Team Disney building, yeah. Dedicated in 2003. Acknowledging his role in founding the corporate structure itself.
And a second copy is in the World Bazaar section of Tokyo Disneyland. It cements his recognition as a truly global corporate architect.
It really does.
So after this extensive deep dive into the sources on Roy O. Disney, what does it all confirm? I mean, what's the big takeaway?
I think it solidifies that he was far more than a brother. He was the essential anchor.
The anchor, I like that.
He represented stability, he enforced meticulous finance, and he was a relentless executor of Walt's grandest visions. You know, without the robust, debt-free financial foundation he built, the creative brilliance of Walt might have just burned brightly and briefly.
And never materialized into the lasting multi-billion-dollar corporate structure we know today.
It's a compelling case study in complementary leadership. And it raises a crucial question for you, the listener, in any venture. How often are the foundational business partners, the silent executors, overlooked in favor of the creative innovators?
It happens all the time.
Roy's career is this powerful testament to the necessity of committed, patient, and critically debt-free execution of a grand vision. He protected the creative magic by remaining rigorously practical and financially conservative.
He took a late-night pitch delivered in a hospital and transformed it into one of the most stable corporations in the world. He ensured that when the time came to open Walt Disney World, Walt's ultimate creative dream, the project was ready for success, shielded from the burden of immediate, overwhelming financial commitments.
Roy's commitment to self-funding and financial control ensured the launch of that $400 million project was effectively debt-free. So as you consider any grand, long-term project in your own life, launching a venture, financing a major life goal, or just establishing long-term personal wealth, what are the specific Roy O. Disney-style financial and managerial structures you need to put in place right now?
Think about that achievement, $400 million without additional debt. What is your personal version of that monumental stable launch? What structure are you building today to ensure your vision can launch with similar stability tomorrow?
That is the real applicable legacy of Roy O. Disney, a powerful framework for any future endeavor. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.